The warning lights flashed red across the control panel, gripped the shuttle controls as the small craft shook violently. Ice crystals formed on the faster than the defrost system could clear them. Come on," she muttered, trying to level out the descent. The ion storm had appeared from nowhere, tearing through the atmosphere of 7 like a hungry beast. Her instruments were going crazy. The altitude meter spun uselessly. Was it not a pilot? She knew how to land a shuttle in normal conditions, but this storm was anything but normal. The research vessel Horizon Dawn orbited somewhere above her, but she might as well have been on the other side of the galaxy. Communications were dead. Navigation was dead. She was flying blind through a frozen hell. The shuttle hit something hard. Metal screamed. Its head snapped forward against her restraints. The world spun in a chaos of white and gray, then everything stopped moving. She sat in the tilted cockpit for a long moment, breathing hard. Her chest hurt where the safety harness had caught her. Blood trickled down her forehead from a cut above her eye. But she was alive. Ran through the emergency checklist with shaking hands. Main power was offline. Life support was running on backup. The hull had breached in 3 places, but the emergency seals had held. She was lucky, very lucky. She climbed out of her seat and pulled on her jacket. The temperature in the shuttle was already dropping. 7 was a frozen moon, barely habitable even for the native species who lived here. For a human, it was deadly. Checked her thermal suit in the equipment locker. Her heart sank. The crash had torn a long gash through the insulated material. The suit was useless. She had her standard-issue jacket, her emergency supplies, and not much else. The distress beacon activated automatically. Good. The Horizon Dawn would pick up the signal once the storm cleared. She just had to survive until then. Gathered her emergency pack, a thermal blanket, some rations, and a scanner. She also grabbed the emergency fuel tabs for starting fires. Outside the shuttle, the wind cut through her jacket like knives. Snow and ice pelted her face. Could barely see 10 feet in any direction. The storm was still raging. She needed shelter fast. Her scanner picked up a cave system nearby, struggled through the deep snow, following the scanner's directions. Her fingers were already going numb. This moon was even colder than she had thought. The cave entrance was a dark mouth in the white landscape. Stumbled inside, grateful to escape the wind. She turned on her flashlight and looked around. The cave went deep into the hillside. The temperature was still freezing, but at least the wind could not reach her here. That was when she heard it, a soft whimpering sound like a child crying. Froze, there should not be anyone out here. The settlements were miles away. But the sound came again, weak and frightened. She moved deeper into the cave, following the sound. Her light beam cut through the darkness. Then she saw them. 3 small figures huddled against the cave wall. They were cubs, their fur covered in ice. They could not have been more than 5 or 6 years old. Their large eyes reflected her light like mirrors. They shivered so hard that could hear their teeth chattering. The cubs pressed back against the wall as she approached. The largest one, a female with silver markings on her face, hissed at. She bared her small fangs in warning. The 2 smaller cubs, both males, hid behind their sister. "Hey, it's okay," said softly. She knew they probably could not understand her words, but maybe they would understand her tone. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cubs did not move. They watched her with fear and confusion, could see they were in bad shape. Their fur was matted and wet. Ice had formed on their whiskers and ears. They trembled with cold. Had studied the species during her training. She knew that young could not regulate their body temperature well. They needed their parents or pack to keep them warm. These cubs had been separated somehow, probably during the storm. Without help, they would freeze to death. She checked her scanner. Night was coming fast, and the temperature would drop even more. The storm showed no signs of stopping. Tried her communicator again, hopping to reach the settlements, but the device was still dead. She was alone with 3 dying alien children. No rescue was coming for at least 2 days. She had 1 thermal blanket, 1 jacket, and limited supplies. Looked at the cubs again. They had stopped hissing and were just staring at her now. The silver-marked female tilted her head slightly, studying the strange alien who had invaded their shelter. The 2 males peeked out from behind their sister, their eyes wide and scared. She made her decision. Set down her pack and pulled out her rations. She opened a protein bar and broke it into pieces. Moving slowly, she placed the pieces on the ground near the cubs and backed away. The silver female sniffed the air. She was clearly hungry, but also cautious. After a long moment, she crept forward and grabbed one piece of the bar. She sniffed it carefully, then took a small bite. Her ears perked up slightly. She ate the rest quickly and grabbed two more pieces, bringing them back to her brothers. Watch them eat. At least they would have some food in their stomachs, but food would not be enough. The temperature was dropping fast. She could see her breath in the beam of her flashlight. The cubs needed warmth. They needed insulation from the cold. They needed the one thing that might save them. She looked down at her jacket. It was a good jacket, military grade, designed to keep humans warm in cold environments. Without it, she would be in serious danger. The thin undershirt she wore beneath would provide almost no protection. But these were children. They were scared and cold and far from home. Had taken an oath as to protect and study alien life, not to let it die while she watched. The cubs huddled together again, their small bodies shaking. The silver female wrapped her arms around her brothers, trying to share what little warmth they had. It was not enough. Could see it was not enough. She stood up and slowly approached them. The cubs tensed, but they were too weak and cold to run. Carefully removed her jacket. The cold air hit her immediately, making her gasp. "This is probably stupid," she told the cubs, "but I can't just watch you freeze." Moving gently, draped the jacket over all three cubs. They flinched at first, confused by what she was doing. But as the jacket's warmth surrounded them, they stopped pulling away. The silver female looked up with those large, intelligent eyes. There was a question in that look. Why was this strange alien helping them? Backed away and started setting up her small camp. She had her thermal blanket, which she used to create a windbreak near the cave entrance. She gathered some dry debris and used her emergency fuel tabs to start a small fire. The flames were tiny, barely giving off heat in the large cave, but they were better than nothing. She sat near the fire, wrapping her arms around herself. The cold was already seeping into her bones. Her teeth began to chatter. She looked over at the cubs, who were still huddled under her jacket. They had stopped shivering as much. That was good. Fed another fuel tab to the fire and tried not to think about how long the night would be. She tried not to think about how cold it would get. She tried not to think about the fact that she might have just killed herself to save 3 alien children she did not even know. The fire burned low as the first hour passed. Fed it another fuel tab and watched the small flames struggle against the cold. She had maybe a dozen tabs left. She needed to use them carefully. The temperature kept dropping. Scanner showed it was now 30 degrees below freezing. By dawn, it would be even worse. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her thin thermal blanket around her shoulders. It helped, but not much. Across the cave, the 3 cubs were quiet under her jacket, could see the rise and fall of their breathing. They were sleeping now, exhausted from fear and cold. The silver female had one arm around each of her brothers, even in sleep. She was protecting them. Understood that feeling, the need to protect the small and helpless. It did not matter that these were alien children from a species that barely tolerated humans. They were children. That was enough. Her own body was starting to react to the cold. Her fingers tingled painfully. Her toes felt like blocks of ice in her boots. She kept flexing her hands, trying to keep the blood flowing. She could not let herself get frostbite. The wind howled outside the cave. Snow blew in through the entrance, creating small drifts just inside the opening. The storm was getting worse, not better. Checked her scanner again. No change. The iron storm was still blocking all communications. The horizon dawn could not reach her, and she could not reach them. She thought about Captain Hayes, her commanding officer. The captain would have ordered a search party by now. But no one could fly in this storm. They would have to wait until it cleared. Was on her own. A small sound made her look up. The silver-marked cub had woken up. The young's head poked out from under the jacket. She looked around the cave until her eyes found. Smiled even though her face felt frozen. "Hey there, little one, how are you feeling?" The cub tilted her head, studying with those large golden eyes. She made a soft chirping sound. It was not aggressive or fearful. It sounded almost like a question. "I don't speak your language," said. Her voice shook from the cold. "But I hope you're warmer now." The cub chirped again. She pulled herself out from under the jacket carefully, making sure not to disturb her sleeping brothers. Then she stood up on shaky legs and walked toward. Held very still. She did not want to scare the cub, but her heart was beating fast. Were known for being territorial and aggressive, even the young ones. If this cub decided was a threat, those small claws could do real damage. But the cub did not attack. Instead, she sat down a few feet away from and continued to stare at her. The young's nose twitched as she sniffed the air. Her ears turned this way and that, listening to every sound made. "You're a brave one," said softly, "checking out the weird alien who crashed into your world." The cub made a trilling sound. Then she noticed how badly was shivering. The cub's ears flattened against her head. She looked at, then back at the jacket covering her brothers, then at again. Saw understanding dawn in those young eyes. The cub realized that the human had given away her warmth. That was freezing while the cubs were safe under the jacket. The young stood up and walked back to her brothers, thought she was going back to sleep. But instead, the cub carefully pulled the jacket off the sleeping males. They grumbled in their sleep but did not wake up. They curled together, their fur providing some warmth to each other. The cub dragged the jacket across the cave floor toward. It was too big for her small body, and she had to pull hard. But she did not give up. She brought the jacket all the way to and dropped it at her feet. Then the young chirped at her, looking between and the jacket. Felt tears prick at her eyes. This child, this alien child who should have feared humans, was trying to return the favor. She was trying to help. "No, sweetie," said gently. "You need it more than I do, you and your brothers." But the cub was stubborn. She pushed the jacket toward with her small paws. She chirped more urgently. When did not take it, the cub actually grabbed Sar's arm with her paws and tried to pull her toward the jacket. Laughed despite the cold. The sound came out harsh and broken. Okay, how about we share?" She picked up the jacket and moved closer to where the two male cubs slept. The silver female watched her carefully, sat down near the sleeping cubs and spread the jacket over all of them. Then she gestured for the female cub to come closer. The young understood. She climbed under the jacket and pressed herself against side. Her warm fur touched frozen skin through the thin undershirt. It felt like heaven. Wrapped the jacket around the cub and herself. The two male cubs were on her other side, and she made sure the jacket covered them too. It was a tight fit, but it worked. The warmth from the cubs seeped into his body. Her shivering slowed down a little. The young were like small furnaces, their body temperature naturally higher than humans. Had studied this in her training, but experiencing it was different. The cubs were literally saving her life with their body heat. The silver female made a soft purring sound. She looked up with those golden eyes and blinked slowly. Had read that slow blinks were a sign of trust among. This cub was telling her she was safe. "Thank you," whispered. "You're a good girl." The cub purred louder and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep again, her small body relaxed against side. Sat there in the cold cave, huddled under her jacket with 3 alien children pressed against her. The fire burned low. The wind howled. The storm raged on, but for the first time since the crash, felt a small spark of hope. They would survive this together. The night wore on, drifted in and out of consciousness. She was too cold to sleep properly, but too exhausted to stay fully awake. She kept the fire going, feeding it fuel tabs every hour. The cubs slept peacefully, their breathing slow and steady. Around midnight, one of the male cubs woke up. He made a small, distressed sound and looked around in confusion. The silver female woke immediately and chirped at him soothingly. She nuzzled her brother, calming him down. Watched the interaction with tired eyes. The female cub was clearly the leader, the protector of her small group. She reminded of herself in some ways, always looking out for others, even at her own cost. The male cub calmed down under his sister's attention. He noticed and froze. His eyes went wide, but his sister chirped at him again, and he seemed to relax. If his sister trusted this strange creature, then maybe he could too. The male cub sniffed its hand curiously. His nose was cold and wet against her skin. Stayed very still, letting him explore. After a moment, the cub seemed satisfied. He curled back up against side, adding his warmth to the small huddle. Scanner beeped softly. She checked it with numb fingers. The temperature had dropped to 40 below. Outside the cave, it was even colder. Nothing could survive out there. But inside the cave, under a shared jacket, a human and 3 alien cubs kept each other warm. Thought about her family back on Earth. Her mother would be worried sick if she knew what was doing right now. Her mother had never wanted to join the Xenobiology Corps. Too dangerous, she said, too far from home. But had always been drawn to the stars. She wanted to meet other species, to learn from them, to understand them. She believed that humans could be friends with aliens, that they could build bridges across the vast emptiness of space. Looking at the three cubs pressed against her, felt that belief strengthen. These children did not care that she was human. They did not care about the politics between their species. They just knew that she had helped them when they were cold and scared. That was what mattered, not the differences between species, but the simple act of caring for someone in need. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the cave, a small family huddled together against the cold. A human who gave her jacket to strangers, three cubs who shared their warmth with the alien who had saved them. The night was long and brutal. His body temperature continued to drop despite the cub's warmth. She knew she was in danger. She could feel the hypothermia setting in, making her thoughts slow and fuzzy. Her fingers and toes had gone completely numb. But she did not regret her choice. Even if rescue never came, even if this cave became her grave, she would not regret saving these children. The silver female seemed to sense distress. She pressed closer, purring loudly. The vibration was soothing, rested her head against the cave wall and closed her eyes. Just a little rest, she thought, just for a moment, woke to find the fire had gone out. The cave was pitch black except for the faint glow from her scanner. Panic shot through her before she remembered where she was. The cubs were still pressed against her, their warm bodies the only thing keeping her alive. Tried to move and found her limbs were stiff and slow. Her thoughts felt thick, like moving through mud. These were bad signs. She fumbled for her flashlight with clumsy fingers. It took 3 tries to turn it on. The beam of light revealed the dead fire pit. Needed to get it going again, but her body did not want to cooperate. The silver female cub stirred and looked up at. The young made a concerned chirping sound. She could probably sense that something was wrong with the human. "I'm okay," lied through chattering teeth. "Just cold." She forced herself to reach for her pack. Her fingers barely worked. She managed to grab another fuel tab and crawl to the fire pit. It took forever to get the tab positioned right. Her hands shook so badly that she dropped it twice. The silver cub watched with intelligent eyes. When finally got the fuel tab in place, the cub made a questioning sound. Pulled out her emergency lighter. She clicked it once, twice. Nothing happened. Her fingers were too numb to work the mechanism properly. The cub moved closer, studying what was trying to do, tried the lighter again and again. Finally, a small spark caught. The fuel tab ignited, creating a tiny flame. Added some dried debris to the fire and watched it grow. Not much, but enough. She slumped back against the cave wall, exhausted from the effort. The silver cub chirped at her and returned to her brothers, but she kept looking back as if checking to make sure the human was still there. As the second day began, knew she was in serious trouble. Her core temperature had dropped too low. She could not feel her fingers or toes. Her thoughts kept wandering and she had to fight to stay focused. She checked her scanner. The storm was finally weakening, but it would be at least another full day before it cleared enough for rescue. Was not sure she had another day in her. The cubs woke up one by one. They were doing better now. The jacket and shared warmth had helped them recover. They moved around the cave more easily, exploring their surroundings with typical cub curiosity. The silver female stayed close to. She seemed to understand that the human was sick. The young brought small handfuls of snow, dropping them near her. Realized the cub was trying to give her water. "Smart girl," whispered. She scooped up some snow and put it in her mouth. The cold hurt her teeth, but the moisture helped. She had not realized how thirsty she was. The cub purred and brought her more snow. Ate it slowly, grateful for the small comfort. One of the male cubs found his pack and started investigating. He pulled out a protein bar and looked at it curiously. His sister chirped at him sharply, and he brought the bar to her instead of eating it himself. The silver female took the bar and brought it too. She dropped it in his lap and chirped insistently. His hands shook as she opened the wrapper. She broke the bar into pieces and offered some to the cubs. The silver female refused, pushing the food back toward. She made an urgent sound, as if telling she needed to eat. "You're taking care of me now," said with a weak smile. "Okay, I'll eat." She forced herself to chew and swallow. The food sat heavy in her stomach, but she knew she needed the calories. The cubs watched her eat, their golden eyes serious and concerned. After finished eating, she tried to stand up. Her legs would not support her weight. She collapsed back down, breathing hard. The simple act of standing was too much. The cubs made distressed sounds. They gathered around, pressing close. The silver female nuzzled's face, making worried chirps. "I'm sorry," told them. "I don't think I'm doing so well." She knew what was happening. Severe hypothermia was shutting down her body. Her heart rate was slowing. Her breathing was shallow. Without proper medical care, she would not survive much longer. But the cubs had a chance now. They were stronger, warmer. When rescue came, they would be found. They would survive. That thought gave comfort. She had not failed them. The silver cub seemed to sense declining condition. The young made a decision. She turned to her brothers and made a series of sharp chirps and trills. The males listened, their ears perked up. Then all three cubs moved into action. They surrounded, pressing their warm bodies against her from all sides. The silver female positioned herself against chest, right over her heart. The two males pressed against sides and back. They poured their body heat into her, sharing their warmth without reservation. The cubs had learned from sacrifice. Now they were returning it. Felt tears freeze on her cheeks. These children, these beautiful alien children, were trying to save her life. They barely knew her. She was not their species, but they cared. They understood that she had helped them, and now they wanted to help her. The warmth from the cubs seeped into his frozen body. Her shivering increased at first, which was actually a good sign. It meant her body was trying to warm itself again. The cubs did not move away from the violent shaking. They stayed pressed close, purring loudly. Time passed in a blur, drifted in and out of consciousness. Every time she surfaced, the cubs were still there. Warm, protective, loyal. At some point, the silver female learned how to add fuel to the fire. Watched through half-closed eyes as the young cub carefully picked up a fuel tab in her small paws and dropped it onto the flames. The fire grew brighter. The cub chirped proudly and returned to side. "Good girl," mumbled. "So smart." The day wore on. Scanner beeped periodically with updates. The storm was clearing. Her distress beacon was getting stronger. Help was coming. But would it come in time? Tried to stay awake, but the exhaustion was too much. Her eyes kept closing. The cubs purred around her, a soothing vibration that called her toward sleep. She fought it at first. Sleep felt too much like giving up, but eventually she could not fight anymore. The last thing remembered before darkness took her was the silver cub curled against her chest, purring steadily. The sound matched heartbeat, slow and fatting. In her dreams was warm. She was back on Earth in her childhood home. Her mother was making soup in the kitchen. The smell filled the house with comfort. But something pulled at her, keeping her from fully sinking into the dream. A soft sound, a gentle vibration, 3 small heartbeats close to hers. The cubs needed her to hold on. They had not given up on her. She could not give up either. Fought her way back toward consciousness. It was like swimming through ice. Every inch was a struggle, but she could hear the cubs chirping. She could feel their warmth. She opened her eyes to find the silver female staring directly at her. The cub's golden eyes were wide and worried. When she saw his eyes open, she made a happy trilling sound and nuzzled's face. "Still here," whispered, "still fighting." The cub purred and pressed closer. Her brothers joined in, adding their warmth to their sisters. Managed to lift one heavy arm and rest it around the silver female. The cub leaned into the touch, purring louder. They stayed like that for a long time. A human and 3 alien cubs huddled together in a frozen cave, refusing to let the cold win. Scanner beeped. She looked at it with blurry eyes. The storm had cleared. Her distress beacon was transmitting at full strength. Someone would pick up the signal soon. Rescue would come. Just had to hold on a little longer. The cubs seemed to understand that something had changed. They became more alert, their ears swiveling toward the cave entrance. The silver female sat up, listening. Then heard it too, a distant sound cutting through the air. Engines, multiple engines. Ships were coming. The cubs heard it clearly now. They made excited chirping sounds. The silver female looked at and chirped urgently, as if asking if these were friends or enemies. Friends managed to say, "Help is here." The sound grew louder. The ships were close. Tried to call out, but her voice was too weak. The cubs started making noise instead, their high-pitched chirps echoing through the cave. Heavy footsteps crunched through the snow outside. Voices called out in the language. The cubs' ears perked up at familiar sounds. Then figures appeared at the cave entrance, large in thermal gear, carrying lights and equipment. The cubs cried out with joy and rushed toward the newcomers. But the silver female stopped halfway. She looked back torn between the safety of her own kind and the human who had saved her. Commander stood at the cave entrance and stared at the scene before him. In his 40 years of military service, he had seen many strange things, but this was something new. 3 cubs sat wrapped in a human jacket, chirping urgently and pointing at the collapsed human female near the dead fire. The cubs were safe and relatively healthy. The human looked half dead. Was known among his people for his hatred of humans. He had fought against them in the border disputes. He had lost friends to human weapons. He believed humans were dangerous, aggressive, and not to be trusted. But the scene before him challenged everything he believed. "Sir, the cubs are the missing children of," and one of his soldiers reported. "They were caught in the storm while playing too far from the settlement." And the human asked, "She appears to be from the research vessel that requested permission to survey our moon. Her shuttle crashed during the storm. She must have found the cubs here." Moved closer, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. The human's skin had a blue tinge. Her lips were nearly purple. Her breathing was so shallow he could barely see it. Severe hypothermia, probably frostbite on her extremities. Then he looked at what she wore. A thin undershirt, no thermal protection at all. But the cubs wore her jacket. Scanner showed the human's core temperature was critical. She should have kept the jacket. Any rational being would have kept the jacket. It was basic survival. But she had given it to the cubs instead. The silver-marked cub's daughter pulled its arm. She made urgent chirping sounds and gestured at the human. The message was clear: help her, save her. Medic called, "Treat the human quickly." The medic rushed forward with emergency equipment. He wrapped the human in thermal blankets and attached warming pads to her body. He started an IV line to get fluids and medication into her system. "She is in bad condition, Commander," the medic reported. "Her temperature is far too low. She needs advanced medical care immediately." "Can she be moved?" "Yes, but carefully. Any shock to her system could be fatal." Nodded, he activated his communicator. "Transport team, prepare for immediate evacuation. We have 3 cubs and 1 critical human patient." "Understood, Commander." The cubs' parents arrived at the cave entrance, having followed the search party. The mother cried out when she saw her children. She rushed forward and gathered them into her arms, checking them for injuries. The father stood beside. He looked at the scene with narrowed eyes, taking in the same details had noticed. "The human saved them," said quietly. It was not a question. "It appears so," replied. The silver cub pulled away from her mother and ran back to the unconscious human. She pressed close to the human's side, making distressed sounds. Followed and tried to pull her daughter away, but the cub refused to leave. "She gave us her jacket," the cub chirped in her young voice. "She was so cold, but she gave it to us. She kept the fire going, she shared her food, she protected us." Looked at the human with wide eyes. She saw the thin undershirt, the blue skin, the clear signs of someone who had sacrificed their own survival for others. "She did this for strangers," whispered, "for children of another species." Knelt beside the human. He looked at her face, peaceful despite the trauma her body had endured. Then he looked at his cubs, safe and warm because of this human's choice. "We owe her a life debt," said formally. "She gave her warmth so our children could live." The transport team arrived with a medical hover stretcher. They carefully loaded the human onto it, making sure not to jostle her. The medic continued to monitor her vital signs. The silver cub tried to climb onto the stretcher with the human. Her mother gently pulled her back. "We will follow them," told her daughter. "We will make sure she is cared for." Watched as the medic team carried the human out of the cave. The cubs followed close behind, refusing to be separated from their protector. Something about the whole situation bothered him. He had been so certain about humans. They were the enemy. They were violent and untrustworthy. But this human had done something that challenged his beliefs. She had shown mercy, compassion, self-sacrifice. These were the highest virtues in culture. These were the qualities his people valued above all others. And a human had demonstrated them perfectly. Followed the group out of the cave. The storm had passed, leaving the landscape clean and white. Multiple search craft waited nearby, their lights cutting through the dim afternoon light. The human was loaded into a medical transport. The medic worked quickly, hooking her up to advanced life support systems. Her condition was stabilizing, but she was far from safe. Insisted on boarding the same transport with her cubs. "They will not leave her," she explained to, "and I will not leave my children." Nodded, he understood. As the transport lifted off, headed for the main medical facility, stood in the snow and thought about what he had seen. His communicator buzzed. It was the High Council requesting a report. Chose his words carefully. "We have recovered the 3 missing cubs," he said. "They are safe and unharmed. They were found with a human from the research vessel Horizon Dawn. The human had crashed during the storm and discovered the cubs in a cave. She gave them her thermal protection and kept them alive until rescue arrived." There was a long pause on the other end. "The human gave the cubs her own protection?" a council member asked. "In those temperatures?" "Yes, she should have kept it for herself. She did not. She is now in critical condition due to severe hypothermia." Another pause. "This is unusual behavior," the council member said. "What is your assessment, Commander?" Looked at the cave where it had all happened. He thought about the scene inside. The dead fire that the human had kept burning. The empty ration wrappers. The jacket that had saved 3 young lives. "I believe," said slowly, "that I may have misjudged the humans." He ended the communication and boarded his own transport. They flew toward the medical facility, following the ship that carried the dying human and the cubs she had saved. At the medical facility, the best doctors took over the human's care. They worked with efficiency and skill, bringing her body temperature up slowly and carefully. Too fast could kill her. Too slow and they would lose her anyway. And waited in the corridor with their cubs. The silver female refused to sit still. She paced back and forth, making worried sounds. "She will live," told her daughter. "The doctors are very good." But the cub did not seem convinced. She had felt how cold the human was. She had heard how weak her heartbeat had become. Arrived and found the family waiting. He stood with them in silence. There was nothing to say. They could only wait. Hours passed. The cubs fell asleep, exhausted from their ordeal, held them close, grateful to have them back. Stood guard, his warrior instincts on alert even in this safe place. Finally, a doctor emerged from the treatment room. Everyone stood up. "The human will survive," the doctor announced. "We have stabilized her core temperature and treated the frostbite. She will need time to recover, but she will live." Closed her eyes in relief, placed a hand on her shoulder, even felt something ease in his chest. The silver cub woke up and chirped urgently, translated her daughter's question. "She wants to know when she can see the human." The doctor considered this. "The human is very weak, she needs rest, but perhaps a short visit would be acceptable." The human spoke several times in her unconsciousness. She kept asking if the cubs were safe. They were led into the recovery room. Lay on a medical bed, her body covered in warming blankets. Monitors beeped softly, tracking her vital signs. Her face was still pale, but the blue tinge was gone. The silver cub climbed carefully onto the bed and curled up next to. She purred softly, sharing her warmth one more time. His eyes fluttered open. She looked confused at first, taking in the strange room and the unfamiliar faces. Then her eyes found the silver cub pressed against her side. "You're safe," whispered. Her voice was rough and weak. "All of you, that's good." The cub purred louder and nuzzled's hand. Stepped forward. Through a translator device she spoke to. "You saved my children. You gave them your warmth when you had so little. You kept them alive." Managed a small smile. "They kept me alive too. We helped each other." "You are a stranger to us," continued. "A different species. You had no obligation to help, yet you nearly died protecting them. Why?" Looked at the 3 cubs gathered around her bed. She thought about the question. "They were children," she said simply. "Cold and scared and alone. How could I not help?" The room was silent, stood in the corner listening. Those words echoed in his mind. How could I not help? It was such a simple answer, but it spoke of a depth of character that could not be faked or taught. Spent 2 days in the medical facility. The doctors monitored her recovery carefully, treating the frostbite on her fingers and toes. She would keep all her digits, they told her. She had been very lucky. But knew it was not luck. It was 3 small cubs who had shared their warmth when she needed it most. The cubs visited her constantly. Their parents could barely keep them away. The silver female, who learned was named, refused to leave bedside. She curled up on the medical bed and purred as if her presence alone could speed healing. The two males, Kel and Tam, brought things they thought she might need. Blankets, food, toys. They were trying to take care of her the way she had taken care of them. And visited every day as well. They brought traditional foods and taught her more of their language. They treated her with a respect that surprised. She had just done what anyone would do, or so she thought. But as explained, not everyone would do what she did. Most beings have a survival instinct, he told her through the translator. They protect themselves first. It is natural, it is expected. But you put 3 alien children before your own survival. That is not common, that is extraordinary. Did not feel extraordinary. She felt tired and sore. Her fingers still tingled from the frostbite. Her body ached from the hypothermia. But when she looked at the 3 healthy cubs playing in her room, she knew she would make the same choice again. On the 3rd day, Commander visited. He stood in the doorway of her room, a large and intimidating figure, had heard about him from the medical staff. He was known for his dislike of humans. But when he spoke, his voice was respectful. "I came to see how you are recovering," said. "Better every day," replied. "Your doctors are very skilled. They tell me you will make a full recovery. That is good." Moved into the room and stood beside her bed. Who had been dozing at side, lifted her head and chirped a greeting. The stern commander's expression softened slightly when he looked at the cub. "I must confess something to you," said. "I did not like humans. I believed you were dangerous and untrustworthy. I fought against your kind in the border conflicts. I lost friends." Nodded, she had studied those conflicts in her training. They had been brutal and costly for both sides. "I understand," she said quietly. "War creates wounds that do not heal easily." "Yes," agreed. "But then I found you in that cave. I saw what you had done. You gave those cubs your jacket. You kept them warm while you froze. You had no reason to help them. They were not your kind, yet you nearly died protecting them." He paused, searching for words. "You have challenged my beliefs about your species," he continued. "I have reported what I saw to the High Council. They are very interested in meeting you." Me was surprised. "Why?" "Because you represent something we thought humans did not possess. Compassion for other species. Willingness to sacrifice for strangers. These are qualities we value highly." Reached into his uniform and pulled out a small item. It was a medal crafted in traditional style. "The High Council has awarded you the Star of Mercy," he said. "It is given to those who show extraordinary compassion and self-sacrifice. You are the first human to receive this honor." He pinned the medal to his hospital gown. It was beautiful, made of silver metal shaped like a 4-pointed star. Touched it gently, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you will tell your people what happened here," replied. "Say you will show them that and humans can be allies, not enemies." Looked at, who purred softly beside her. She thought about the 3 cubs who had trusted her, who had shared their warmth, who had saved her life in return. "I will," promised. Nodded and left, but could see that something had changed in the old warrior. His hatred had been challenged by reality. It was a small crack in a wall of prejudice, but it was a start. That afternoon, Captain Hayes from the Horizon Dawn arrived to retrieve. The captain was a no-nonsense officer who ran a tight ship. She entered the medical facility with an official expression, ready to debrief her officer. But what she found surprised her. His room was filled with visitors, and sat beside the bed with their cubs. Several local officials had come to pay their respects. Even Commander had returned with some of his soldiers. "Lieutenant," Captain Hayes said formally, "I am glad to see you recovered." "Thank you, Captain," replied. She tried to sit up, mindful of military protocol. Captain Hayes looked around the room at all the, "I see you have made quite an impression during your stay." Stood up and addressed the captain through a translator. "Your officer saved our children. She gave them her warmth when she had little to spare. She nearly died protecting them. We are forever in her debt." The captain's expression shifted. She looked at with new understanding. "I see," she said. "Perhaps you should brief me on exactly what happened, Lieutenant." Told the story. She kept it simple and factual, describing the crash, finding the cubs, the decision to give them her jacket. She did not make herself sound heroic. She just stated what happened. But everyone in the room knew the truth. Had chosen 3 alien children over her own survival. It was a choice that spoke volumes. When finished, Captain Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "You violated survival protocols," she said finally. "Yes, Captain. You put yourself at extreme risk." "Yes, Captain. And you would do it again, would you not?" Looked at the three cubs, chirped at her encouragingly. Kel and Tam played with a small toy, safe and healthy. "Yes, Captain, I would." Captain Hayes smiled. It was a rare expression on her usually stern face. "Then I suppose I cannot punish you for saving lives," she said. "In fact, Command will probably want to give you a medal of your own." Stepped forward. "If I may speak, Captain Hayes, what your officer did here has changed many minds among my people. The High Council wishes to open formal diplomatic talks with your government. We believe humans and can benefit from cooperation rather than conflict." Captain Hayes's eyes widened. "Formal diplomatic relations? That is significant, Commander." "It is, and it is because of Lieutenant's actions. She proved that humans can be trusted, that they can show mercy and compassion even at great personal cost." The captain looked at with something like awe. "Lieutenant, do you realize what you have accomplished? Border tensions have existed between our species for years. Many attempts at peace talks have failed, but you, alone in a cave with three cubs, may have built the bridge we needed." Felt overwhelmed. She had just been trying to keep some children warm. She had not thought about politics or diplomacy. She had just done what felt right. "I did not do anything special," protested. "I just helped some kids who needed it." Spoke up. "That is exactly why it matters. You did not help them for political gain. You did not help them because someone ordered you to. You helped them because your heart told you it was right. That authenticity cannot be faked. It cannot be taught. It simply is." Nodded in agreement. "You showed us the best of what humans can be: caring, protective, willing to sacrifice for those weaker than yourself. These are the qualities of true honor." Felt tears prick at her eyes. She had spent her career studying alien species, trying to understand them, hopping to build connections. And in one frozen night, she had accomplished more than years of formal study could achieve. All because she had given her jacket to three cold children. The next day, prepared to leave. The doctors had cleared her for travel. Her ship was ready. But saying goodbye to the cubs was harder than she had expected. Clung to, making sad chirping sounds. The cub did not want her to leave. Kel and Tam pressed close, their large eyes wet with tears. "I have to go," told them gently, "but I will never forget you, any of you." Pulled something from around her neck. It was a small braided cord made from the cub's own shed fur. She carefully tied it around his wrist. It was a traditional friendship token meant to represent an unbreakable bond. His throat tightened with emotion. She hugged the small cub, feeling the soft fur and hearing the gentle purr. "I will treasure this," whispered, and approached, spoke formally, with the translator converting his words. "You saved our children when you had no obligation to do so. You gave your warmth freely and asked nothing in return. By the ancient laws of our people, we adopt you into our clan. You are family now. You will always have a place among the—" Could not speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Placed a traditional clan marking on his forehead, a temporary paint that would wash off but carried deep significance. Was now part of their family, not by blood but by choice and deed. When it was time to leave, the cubs walked to the transport. They chirped and purred and pressed against her legs, knelt down and hugged each one. "Be good," she told them. "Listen to your parents, stay warm." Made one last gesture. She took off his jacket, which had been cleaned and repaired, and helped put it on. The jacket that had saved 3 lives was now returned to its owner. But knew it would never be just a jacket again. It was a symbol, a reminder, a bridge between species. As the transport lifted off, watched the 3 cubs and their parents grow smaller. They stood together, waving until the transport was out of sight. Captain Hayes sat beside in the transport. "The High Council has sent formal documents to our government," she said. "They want to establish embassies, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. They specifically requested that you be part of the first diplomatic mission." Touched the friendship cord on her wrist. She thought about his golden eyes, full of trust and love. She thought about the long, cold night in the cave when a human and 3 alien cubs had kept each other alive. "I would be honored," said. The story spread quickly through human space. News outlets picked it up. Scientists discussed it. Politicians debated it, but the simple truth remained at the center of everything. A human had given her jacket to 3 cold alien children and nearly died from the cold herself. Those children had then shared their warmth to save her. Together, they had survived. It was a story that resonated across species boundaries. Parents everywhere understood the instinct to protect children. Young people saw hope for a better future. Even old warriors found their prejudices challenged. Returned to service, but she was changed. She became an ambassador of sorts, traveling between human and worlds, building the relationships that had started in a frozen cave. Wherever she went, she wore the star of mercy and the friendship cord. And she always kept her jacket close. Years later, when the first human joint colony was established, was there for the ceremony. Was there too, now a young adult, training to be a diplomat like her adopted human aunt. They stood together at the dedication, watching humans and work side by side to build something new, something better. "Do you ever regret it?" asked. "Giving us your jacket, you almost died." Smiled and put her arm around the young. "Never," she said. "Not even for a moment. You taught me something important that night." "What did I teach you?" "That the best things in life are worth suffering for. That compassion is stronger than cold. That 3 cubs shivering in a cave are worth more than any amount of personal safety." Purred and leaned against. "You taught me something too. You taught me that kindness has no species, that a stranger can become family, that the warmest hearts exist in the coldest places." They stood together, human and watching 2 species build a future based on trust and cooperation. It had all started with one simple act. One human giving her jacket to children who needed it more than she did. The cubs had shivered in the cold cave, had given them her jacket and endured the cold herself. And from that sacrifice, a new era of peace had been born. It was instinctive, natural. "Human," smiled weakly. "Go on, it's okay." The cub hesitated one more moment. Then she ran too, nuzzled her face one last time, and joined her brothers. More figures entered the cave, heard urgent voices speaking in. Someone knelt beside her, checking her vital signs with professional efficiency. Vision was fading again, but before the darkness took her, she saw the silver cub watching her from the safety of adult arms. Those golden eyes held a promise. The cub would remember. The cubs kept her warm as she drifted into an uneasy sleep. But when she looked at those cubs, safe under her jacket, she knew she had made the right choice. Even if it cost her everything,